When two earthquakes struck Iran in April, the impact was significant. Hundreds of buildings were damaged, more than 30 lives were lost. Tremors from those quakes were felt here in Dubai, 300 to 500 miles from the epicenters. Nobody died, no one was hurt. In fact, the impact was nothing more serious than items falling off shelves and partition walls shaking. But it still caused mild panic, sending social media into overdrive as office towers and apartment blocks were evacuated. And while some people here were able to laugh at a reaction many felt over the top, others were genuinely surprised that they felt anything at all in their buildings. Since those tremors, Dubai authorities have changed building regulations, saying new towers of 10 stories or more needed to be at least a third more resistant to the effects of earthquakes.
This plate is going below the Euro-Asian plate.
Decision makers insist the recent tremors here were not a factor in the change. In fact, the local government had always insisted on a higher degree of earthquake resistance than international surveys suggested was necessary. So why are they now going another notch higher?
From different sources, we gathered information indicating that previous assumptions are not valid. So we decided to go one step further and to be more conservative and to be more strict in the design of buildings. And we change the zone that should be considered in design from zone 2A to 2B. 2B buildings can resist earthquakes up to 5.9 on Richter scale.
Completed buildings and those already approved or under construction are exempt from the changes. And in very tall buildings, stringent wind resistance rules mean they're already likely able to cope with bigger earthquakes than the new rules require. But developers working on medium-height buildings are probably going to take a financial hit.
The assessment so far is that between 5 and 10% increase in concrete strength and reinforcement into the structure to cope with the additional allowances in the structure for the upgraded code, the seismic code. Given that the structure costs of a building are normally around 30%, 35%, a bit more in very tall structures, then a change of 10% in the concrete and reinforcement is going to make maybe a 2–3% change in the overall cost of a structure of, say, 10 to 30 stories.
In the case of increase in loads, the primary impact is that the footprint of this central core actually needs to get a bit bigger.
And despite the exemption for existing buildings, structural engineers like Mark are getting calls from people concerned about the safety of their finished towers.
Well, we have been contacted by a number of clients, both current and historic, a lot of which have been prompted by questions from their own tenants following the tremors that we had in April. Obviously there was a lot of movement that occurred during these events, and it's caused significant alarm. From a response perspective, from our side of things, we really need to look at buildings on an individual basis. At the moment we haven't found anything that needs to be changed in any of the existing buildings, but it's still at a very early stage.
Experts like Mark say that it makes sense to toughen earthquake rules, even if only because the impact of a building failure could be that much more significant, following substantial rises in both Dubai's population and the concentration of tall buildings. And irrespective of cost, the new requirements are likely to be interpreted as positive news by the average person living in the city.
Jonathan Frewin reporting there.